Hello everybody. My name is Sudi Vengarai, and welcome to the Indegene Digital Summit 2022, the latest and greatest on all things digital within life sciences. Today, we're going to be talking about a very important topic, changing perceptions on MLR approval from a bottleneck to an enabler of superior customer experiences. Just by the way of introductions, my name is Sudi Vengarai, and I lead the business development efforts for our medical affairs practice with specific focus on MLR. And I'm extremely honored, delighted to be in the august company of two people that are super passionate about MLR. I'd like to introduce Renee Ott. Renee is the head of global medical information and scientific communications oncology at AstraZeneca. And as a part of the role, Renee is responsible for data substantiation review of US promotional campaigns and also medical content creation within AstraZeneca. I also have with me Andres White. Andres is the head of global marketing operations at Allergan Aesthetics. And he's passionate about applying cross-functional team approaches to the review process that includes working side by side with all internal as well as external stakeholders. Just before we kick off this fireside chat that I'm super excited about, I'd just like to kind of set a little bit of context in terms of the conversation itself. We are seeing 3x to 5x explosion in content today. Content is also becoming highly experiential. Content is becoming highly customized. Content is also becoming intelligent. Content is becoming modular, which is enabling customers to truly reuse and repurpose content, but more importantly, also is enabling customers to drive deep insights. With a focus on omnichannel execution and strategy, you're taking a single piece of content, breaking it down based on archetypes, which means that the same content is being created in several ways to make sure that the final user of the content, it becomes extremely seamless and intuitive for him. Now, if there is going to be a 3x to 5x explosion of content also needs to be reviewed, which means that there is going to be a 3x to 5x number of times the content is going to be reviewed by the MLR committee. As content becomes far more intelligent and experiential, MLR needs to shift left. MLR needs to become far more proactive than how reactive it is, and it needs to be integrated far more upstream. We just heard from Robert Brown today, the SVP at Pfizer, how they are kind of bringing down cycle time from 35 days to about 7 days. The whole idea is that through an integration, seamless integration of technology, how are we able to kind of help to customers go to market faster, but not just importantly go to market faster, but go to market with the right information? How are we able to kind of bring down cycle times? How are we able to kind of emphasize on hyper compliance, so on and so forth? And this is extremely critical, and I hope you find this conversation to be insightful. And with this, I kind of kickstart the conversation perhaps with a question to Renee saying, what is your view on MLR from a medical perspective, and how important do you think is technology when it comes to truly integrating within MLR to try and see how we can bring about efficiencies in the system to kind of go to market faster, so on and so forth? Renee, perhaps if you could start off with that, with your perspective on MLR from a medical perspective, that'll be awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Sudi, and hi everyone, and thanks for the kind introduction. I think from a medical perspective, obviously medical plays an important role in the MLR process in order to ensure that we are compliant with regulations. I think with the emerge of omnichannel, and I guess there is a lot of discussion about this in the summit today and tomorrow. Obviously, with the seamless customer experience we are trying to create as an industry, it has really an impact on the way how we communicate, how we create content, and how we process and review content. And I think a couple of the challenges in the field you have already mentioned. If we continue to do things as we are doing them currently, basically, we're expecting a 3 to 5-fold, 2 to 3-fold, depending on the source, increase in materials to review, or in reviews in total. I think this is one of the challenges. There are a couple of opportunities, but I probably start laying out some of the additional challenges we see before talking about the opportunities, and I'm sure we'll be able to cover later in the discussion also strategies how to overcome them. So the volume is definitely the issue, one of the issues or the challenges. The other one is obviously with omnichannel campaigns, full-blown campaigns, multi-channel, omnichannel, depending on the state of readiness of an organization. Definitely the complexity of those campaigns and the whole management and approval process is definitely increasing. So you mentioned technology as an enabler. The short answer to this part is, at the moment, there is no magic bullet, no single platform that allows or is suited to really handle an omnichannel process end to end, from a content management, approval, and execution process. There is great progress in the field of technological enablers. So there are single areas where technology is really ready for prime time, but unfortunately the magic bullet is missing. And so this is still a challenge, I would say, despite of all the advances. I think, and that's at least my experience in AstraZeneca, and I'm sure other companies are faced with the same challenge. This new mindset, this new approach really requires change management. And this is something you need to invest a lot, and it takes time. It just needs to take time to settle in an organization, to redefine processes, to agree and define new ways of working. And then there are arising channels like social media, for example. We don't have the rules at the moment for those channels, so this need to be defined. But usually, for those who know me, I'm more glass is half full than half empty person, and I think this is where the opportunities really come into place. I think if we do things differently as a cross-functional team, but if I look now about the medical part in the MLR, I think we have huge opportunities to increase productivity and efficiency in the process, to shorten, as was discussed already earlier today, also the turnaround time or the time to complete a review of campaigns. And automation and specialization will definitely help us. I think that the progress in technology like the NLP advances and in general artificial intelligence really help us there. And I think the other opportunities, if we do this right, we will have a seamless process of global to local cascade of content. And I think those are definitely opportunities we should embrace and focus on.
Absolutely. Thanks, Rene. And Andres, I know you lead the whole MLR process from a marketing operations perspective. What are some of the key challenges that you face? Is cycle time a big issue for you? We are talking about 60 days, right, from the time of concept review till the time the actual asset hits out of the door to the customer. What are some of the challenges that you face from the perspective of marketing operations, and do you think technology still has technology is evolving, and what are your views, Andres?
Hi, Sudi, and hi, Rene. Thank you very much for having me. It's a great opportunity to share experiences, best practices, and hear from the folks who are joining us as well. So absolutely, and I think that I want to build on what Rene was mentioning, right? So from my perspective on marketing ops, having been in sales and marketing in my prior career, right, it's always helpful to understand what is the business need and how do we partner early on in terms of the planning and the development of materials and campaigns before they go into review. Because historically, MLR review has always been very reactive and being thought as about a very quick transactional exercise in which I have this piece that I wanted to get approved. And that's when you realize that the misalignment, misunderstanding happen, right? So I think that, not to reiterate the obvious, as you're saying, volume is increasing, demands are increasing internally, externally. In my experience, coming from an Allergan company that was basically working on the in pharma products and in aesthetics products, and now being focused only on aesthetics, the significance of reaching out to consumer is very, very high. We have evolved from the early print days to now the more digital social media days, but we still remain with a mix, right? So some of the main challenges, as Renee was mentioning, is really to support those digital campaigns, the social media campaigns, and some of the successes that we've had is that early on, identify what are the channels, identify how to interpret our own rules, working very closely together with MLRC leadership to determine what are the right templates and the right tools to use to develop those social media materials. And that required a lot of education from myself, my team, the reviewers, in order to understand how do we play in that field? What are the requirements? How do you really optimize submissions instead of having submissions being done on a single basis, be able to bulk them in a more efficient way and use technology in that way? So I think that obviously the issue is that how do we make sure that we're more proactive in terms of the planning, the educating to see what do the teams need and how do we develop those tools and the guidance, and how do you customize the process in order to make them more efficient. So for us, we're really, really under those numbers that you mentioned. So especially in aesthetics that is consumer facing, there's a quick turnaround and expectation to reach out the customers very, very quickly. We're definitely under 20 days. And that's something that we constantly challenge kind of the norm.
Oh, absolutely. And Andres, like you rightly mentioned, MLR is disparate, right? In the sense that there is a whole content development, content generation piece that is happening very separate to MLR. And therefore, the whole idea is that, is there a way for us to seamlessly integrate MLR during the content creation process itself? And then Renee spoke about, business rules, and there is no one magic bullet. And most of the tools, etc., that we're seeing are more validation tools, right? In the sense that, comparing two versions of the content pieces, so on and so forth. But do you, the AI and the ML model is not trained to actually do the medical review. So, we've got some amazing questions here. So one question is that, what is your point of view in terms of, is there a way for us to completely overhaul the MLR through technology? Or because MLR as a process itself is bucketed, right? So there is MLR, post-MLR, and there is MLR, pre-MLR, post-MLR. Are there plug-and-play technologies that you think will make efficiencies to the process? What is your view on technology itself from the perspective of increasing efficiencies within the whole ecosystem or the continuum?
I can tell you to the extent that I can disclose, I know that my BTS partners and teams are working very, very closely with the consumer team, and we're embedded in those discussions and in the understanding in terms of leveraging other tools that can help the agency, internal or external agencies, to start developing content early on that could be seamlessly integrated into Viva and be able to be uploaded. So therefore, you don't need to create manual templates or started the work from a system that you may use outside in order to go into Viva Promo Mats to submit the materials. So there's a seamless integration that we're piloting right now in order to be able to accelerate that. And that basically is carried through the review process. And then later on, when you have things in the cloud that not only basically the field can use, but also globally affiliates can leverage as well, and be able to implement modular content in the future as well, to be able to optimize new versions of those materials. So those are the things that we're working on.
I hear you. And Renee, you spoke about there is not a single magic bullet, so to speak. But how comfortable are you with, there is a stake on the ground saying that MLR technologies will now need to start reviewing materials more than assistance, right? In this, which means because there is significant focus on compliance, you don't want unsubstantiated claims to go into the marketplace, which obviously results in huge fines and non-compliance. And as much as we are using, people to do the review today, how important do you think should be the machine's ability and capability to actually do the review for you, so that the machine takes away the grunt work and you are able to focus on more strategic pieces, right? And secondly, with the onslaught of volumes, it's not about reducing the headcount, but it is about doing more with the same number of people. So do you think, how confident are you that technology is going to enable you to do that, right? And what are your points of view?
Yeah. Let me start with where I think technology is currently ready for prime time, and it's definitely on the claims management perspective, proofreading, the version control, content comparator you mentioned has been mentioned as well. I think where we are struggling in the medical world to a certain extent is the requirements are more complex and versatile, and that's at the end where the machine learning still has an issue because the training sets are too small, and I think that's the main issue in order to get there. If I think about the future, I think in the future I would dream of in a couple of years to have either an automated process or a semi-automated process where basically you really have the rules in place, all the technology in place, and then have a continuous monitoring on risk management and risk-based monitoring, and then basically the scientifically trained personnel making the judgment and ensuring that this process is working. But we're not there yet, and I think at the moment, in order to really move the needle, to build on what Andres has said, is the collaboration is really key in order to uplift the MLR process. So at the moment, we do consult, we plan together, we have live reviews. I think this needs to be strengthened more. We need to jointly plan campaigns and really execute those campaigns end to end. And I think that's one critical step. The other thing is, and Sudi, I believe you mentioned that with moving to the left in your statement at the beginning, is going upstream of the content journey. And when I look in our situation, my team is on the one hand content creator, and then later in the process, obviously with different personnel, also in the review cascade. So why not using this initial review to assign the rules and carry that through the whole process? But what's needed there is a thorough content strategy that really defines all those use cases and applications along the journey, because then obviously you're able at the beginning to assign the right rules and push this through the whole system. So I think this is an area where we can also see improvements, technological improvements pretty soon. Obviously, we're exploring a lot within AstraZeneca. I am same as Andres. I don't want to disclose too much, but also for folks who want to discuss a bit more, Jen Klein, head of scaling and the MLR process, is also part of this 2-day symposium. So I think she's also a good connection point to also exchange for those colleagues who have a more holistic business view.
No, absolutely. Thanks, Rene. I think the two words that I was able to pick out from your conversation was content strategy and collaboration. So, and that actually brings me to a question from the audience that says, what is your view on change management efforts, right? Because it takes a village, and MLR, with all the focus on compliance, how do you cross collaborate, and how do you kind of set expectations in terms of change management efforts that are required to adopt the technology, right? So at a senior leadership level, I think people are convinced that sooner than later, we will need to bring in technology to augment the review. But how important is change management, and do you have a point of view? And Andres, feel free to respond as well, please.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think that's such an important component. I think that, again, building on kind of what Rene was saying, we might have great technology integrated with your electronic approval system of choice, whatever you're using, and if you don't have that collaboration and that support internally, things will not work, right? So you may have the best, but then you will not be able to operate it. And change management is something that I've gone through right now, and I've gone through in my cycle, basically in my job, many times. And for me, it is a key component of making sure things work. From my perspective, having alignment within MLR-C, C being compliance, and then also commercial, and marketing operations being in the center of bringing all those parties together to ensure that alignment. How do you interpret the guidance? How do you customize the process? What are the tools that you're going to use or not? Where is the high risk versus not in terms of the emphasis that you need to put in the process itself is critical. And you may have an internal team, you may have an outsourced team, but if you don't have that alignment that allows that clear communication and the vision of what you're trying to build, it doesn't work. Maybe I'm stating all the obvious points, but I think that those are the things that you need to be very disciplined in terms of communicating with leadership and gaining alignment in order to ensure that any new process is rolled out in the right way, is tested and piloted, working with your BTS or IT partners as well to ensure success.
No, absolutely. And then there is this added complexity of global to local, right? So we are now talking about singular content, which is perhaps global in nature, but then, with introduction of technologies and augmentation of technologies, how are we addressing the global to local? Because every country will have a specific regulation and policy that needs to be addressed to, and how do we integrate those into the business rules, etc. Right. So thank you. That was very useful. So perhaps a question for both of you in terms of are you within your organizations, and as much as you can say in a redacted manner, seeing a push towards technology augmentation within MLR, or just the MLR transformation in general, right? Are there any things that you're doing proactively to try and see how you can go to market faster? How can you kind of really bring up hyper compliance at the same time, reducing the cost of review, right? So if there is a launch that's coming in, you're adding in more bodies to do the review, but what you're not realizing is that these bodies cost you a significant amount of dollars because these are high-skilled MDs, PhDs, etc., that are doing the review. So there is a soft cost of review that keeps on adding. So are you seeing or are you leading any transformational initiatives within MLR within your organizations?
So I want to build on what Andrew said. First of all, on the change management, I think everything he mentioned, I completely endorse, and I think we're all in this situation. The problem is always in big organizations, it's easier said than implemented, and obviously it requires engagement, co-creation, and a lot of communication. So over communication probably is a good thing to do. So at AstraZeneca, without disclosing too much, obviously we're looking into content journeys and defining those areas where we can move more to the left or upstreams. There are various cross-functional projects, and then covering the whole process. And then within the medical space, we're looking at the content strategy, and we are on an innovation journey for 2.5 years now with my team, and we're building on these learnings, the momentum, also, some of the change management and experience we've created there. And I think at the end, critical to success is really bringing the cross-functional teams together, because we cannot do this in isolation, function by function. It really needs to be a lot of discussion and dialogue and co-creation in the cross-functional team. And as you mentioned, potentially also with external partners, because the platforms are quite often external platforms. And then in order to implement those huge changes, obviously you're also dependent on external expertise. And those are the areas we are looking at the moment.
Absolutely.
Without disclosing any details.
No, of course. Thanks, Rene. Much appreciated. Andres, anything from your side?
Yeah, and from my perspective, think about from Allergan Aesthetics perspective, we were acquired by AbbVie about a couple of years ago already. Time flies, and we're working as part of the integration plan to really customize what do we need to do to drive the efficiency and the specific needs of the business for aesthetics, right? Helped by the mothership in terms of AbbVie, right? So we're leveraging support, technologies, and systems. So from aesthetics perspective, kind of what I'm responsible for is really continue to customize the process and really understand what are the areas that from a different type of business, we can be more nimble and we could be more efficient, right? And that's what that alignment is so key. So within that, we're looking at technology, but honestly, the first foundation is to build the team, the established guidelines, the process, the customization, and then determine where we can pilot. Although in the older days, it was easy to pilot and look into results and then be able to go full blown. But now people and teams don't have the appetite to do long-term pilots and tests. So we're just forced to do things in a much more efficient way. So we're mindful of the technology. Those are available, like the ones that Renee was mentioned in terms of claims and so on. But we also encounter those type of challenges that I'm sure we all do, that some more mature brands is easier to establish claims, metrics, messages, automate that and be able to leverage that. But when you're thinking about a consumer audience and you're thinking about more new brands that are continuing to evolve, it's really hard to keep folks honest with the claims, right? Metrics. They tend to evolve very often, and at the end, the work that you do might not pay out basically 3 months down the road. So it's a little bit of a balanced exercise and to determine when and how you do it. So we have it for the established brands. We're not quite there for the new brands. Obviously, you do it at launch to align core materials, but then very quickly evolve. So those are the things that we're trying to juggle to try to drive that efficiency.
No, very, very, very insightful. Thank you very much, Andres. And there's one question for you, especially with Allergan aesthetics, more consumer facing. How important is, as much as you are integrating technologies, how important is agility of creation of content? Because I think the cycle times are much lower for you, like you mentioned, alluded to previously. You need to go to market quicker than anybody else. So how important is agility in terms of creation of content and veracity of content, right? Truthfulness to the whole content itself. What role does it play? And do you think that technology will kind of help synergize those two aspects for you?
Absolutely. So that's critical. It's not important, it's critical. And if you think about, in my perspective, I have two different types of internal customers. I have the US business that deals directly with customers, with Salesforce and with the consumer directly. And we have the global, basically, team that creates global campaigns and core materials that are disseminated to be localized at affiliate level. So the needs are slightly different, but we need to get alignment in terms of being able to develop a whole campaign, holistic campaign that has that global US and ex-US perspective. So there's maybe different needs for my internal customers in terms of timing, but the turnaround, the quick turnaround is critical. And those are the areas that we invest a lot in terms of social media, in terms of education, in terms of understanding what's coming down the pipeline. And I think that Renee mentioned this early on. At the beginning, when maybe 5 years ago, we were one of the first to start having basically a Facebook page and having some communications and offers that we can afford within our business, right? Direct to consumers. We're trying to interpret our own guidelines and be able to educate our reviewers and our marketers in terms of the things that we could and couldn't do. And we're still progressing that tremendously, but every day there's a new technology, a new platform that you need to try to stay ahead and try to understand how to use it, right?
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you very much, Andres. We're just about coming to close. Renee, any final parting thoughts before we conclude the session?
Two things. So one, Andres has mentioned basically, you don't have time nowadays in order to establish a full-blown project. And I think as a take-home message, building agility in your process, in your mindset, in your team, I think is really critical to be successful with this change. I think in general, with omnichannel and the opportunities we have to overcome the challenges we have started at the beginning to discuss, I think we have really a great couple of years in front of us where we can really change a lot to the better. And at the end, we will look back in hindsight to the old outdated processes and will be really surprised how we did it in the old days. So that's my excitement.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so very much. I think we covered a lot of ground. Key takeaways from me is, technology is here to stay. We are looking at the imminent, right? Perception is reality. Content is going to increase exponentially, and we have to be proud to fail, right? And to your point, how do we take on those smaller MVPs and credentialize and take those baby steps towards creating the North Star towards MLR transformation? Thank you so very much, Andres and Renee, for your time. This was extremely insightful and a wonderful conversation. Look forward to continued discussions. Thank you so very much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank
you for having us, and bye, everyone.